Okay, so I read Period by Kate Clancy. So Kate Clancy is an American biological anthropologist at the University of Illinois, and she specializes in like reproductive health, specifically regarding like sexual harassment and science and academia. Specifically, her lab focuses on like intersectional feminist biology, which sounds really cool. By studying the life history and reproductive physiologies of women and gender minorities, um, particularly those who can reproduce. Um, so Period, the book is intended to be aimed at like kind of like just the average person. It was written in a way that was like clearly meant for people who don't have like a medical background. Like I understood it completely fine. I would recommend it to like any of my friends who have like never taken STEM classes. Like it's pretty understandable. Um, but she specifically, like, her intended audience was just sort of like everyone, because the aim of the book was very much to like destigmatize menstruation, and so all of the above, I guess, was her intended audience. Um, let's see. Yeah, so she like specifically like the aim of the book is to sort of like bring to light how the stigma surrounding menstruation has like impacted the way it's approached by like people in their personal lives, whether they do menstruate or they don't, or like medical practitioners and researchers. And then the majority of the book is just like a bunch of different case studies in which like the stigma has sort of like impacted the real world in some way. So there's a couple that I thought were very interesting, that she talks about a lot. So let's see. So one of the first ones she talked about was how like the patriarchy sort of impacts like gynecology, and how like a lot of gynecologists tend to be men, just because that's who kind of tends to be have more opportunities to be more educated and go into, the medical field for various reasons. And then people who seek gynecologists tend to be women or gender nonconforming individuals who have vaginas, who are also usually subject to misogyny, or some sort of discrimination. It sort of creates this like power imbalance where like the doctor is like both male and oftentimes more educated than the clientele, which makes them like not be taken very seriously, and just like the overall quality of gynecology is just like a lot lower than it should be because of this like dynamic, and she calls it like the daddy knows best dynamic. So like then she sort of goes into like beyond just people's personal lives. She talks about like how like a lot of current scientific literature sort of views periods and menstruation as this like evolutionary side effect, and how like it's believed that there was probably selection acting on other parts of the reproductive system that then resulted in like sorry, I'm like my notes. It then resulted in like the period just being a side effect, not doing anything. And it's just like useless. And she kind of argues that might not be the case, and that like it sort of acts as like a priming mechanism for the embryo. She then also goes on to cite this study, which I initially was like really skeptical about. Like not skeptical, like she obviously knows more than me, but I was kind of like, what is this? She like talks about how like there was this study in Australia where like they found like menstrual blood in mice like had like wound healing qualities, which when I initially read it, I was like, that sounds like such like woo-woo crazy nonsense. Like, why is this in here? Then I read the paper. I understood some of it, but I do think it's got a point. I guess it's like something with the stem cells in menstrual blood, and how that has, which is actually really kind of cool, how menstrual blood does have like a different composition than like the blood in the rest of your body. And that is, I mean, like, I don't know if it like evolved to have wound healing properties. Maybe that's a side effect of something. But I don't know. I thought that was kind of cool. Oh, and then another thing she talked about, which I thought was kind of interesting, which is just sort of how, like, I think maybe like misogyny and like the menstrual like stigma kind of like create this like little monster storm of like, I don't know, I'll explain it, hold on. So like she talks about how like fatness is like sort of overstated as like a really big issue for your reproductive health, but being thin is very much understated. I don't know if this is oversharing, but I do have like a slight anecdote that when I read this, I was like jaw on the floor. When I was in high school, I was on the swim team, very intensive swim team. We would practice like multiple hours, sometimes twice a day, 6 to 7 days a week. Don't know how I survived. And it was like, we didn't really talk about it, but when we did, we would kind of joke about it, but we all just like consistently lost our periods from like August through November. And like, yeah, we didn't talk about it, we didn't like whatever. And like, we kind of just didn't think anything of it. We were like, that's life, I guess. And it wasn't until I read this book that I found out that we were like starving. We were eating like, because I think we were just exercising so much that we just didn't know how to eat to like nourish ourselves. We were also put on diets, which was kind of weird, but whatever. But we were eating like 2/3 of our like calorie amount to like maintain our weight. And so like our body sort of like turned off our menstrual cycles in order to like conserve energy, which is like kind of terrifying. And of course, like I try looking like, are there like lasting side effects of this happening? And of course there's like no research about it. Not shocking. But like that was something that happened like accidentally, that like, you know, we were all still probably eating like 2,000 calories a day. Like it happened not on purpose, and we could have likely like permanently damaged to some degree our like reproductive abilities, or like even not even just our reproductive abilities, is not even, that's not just the only thing that like your uterus does. It also like, you know, maintains like hormones in your body. Like it does a lot of things, and like just a whole bunch of girls is probably like might have accidentally damaged it because we don't talk about how like being too thin and under eating, even if it's unintentional, like has like these really big impacts. Like we just don't think to like watch out for it. And it makes me think about like how many other people have had similar experiences, and it's just not talked about. And like, what are the lasting impacts of that? I don't know. Hope there aren't any, but it sounds kind of scary. My God, I've been talking for so long. So I'll skip this. Hold on. Okay. Overall, really like the book. Highly recommend. I think it's super approachable, really easy to read. Science makes sense. The papers that she talks about are also really cool. Overall, really good book. I don't really have a lot of critiques for it. I really liked it. I don't know. Feminist biology is like the only nonfiction I'll read. I actually like, hold on. I like, you know, like I have a lot of them. So yeah, I really liked it. Highly recommend. If you haven't read it yet, please read it. It's really good.